2009 is the 400th anniversary of Galileo's use of a telescope to make observations of the night sky, a scientific advancement that forever changed our understandings of human relationships with the cosmos. The anniversary is being celebrated through a United Nations designated International Year of Astronomy. As part of the global celebrations, many countries are celebrating Aboriginal knowledges of astronomy alongside mainstream science's understandings. Aboriginal astronomy is embedded in night sky stories, and many such stories can be found across Canada. They are rich components of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis cultural heritages. Muin, the Mi'kmaq night sky story of the celestial bear. This image, entitled Reflections, is by Mi'kmaq artist Gerald Glode. It illustrates the Mi'kmaq understanding that everything that happens in the sky is connected with what takes place on Earth. Another way of saying this is that patterns on Earth are reflected in patterns in the sky. Night sky stories are told to transmit these rich understandings generation after generation. Canada has 15 terrestrial ecozones. Each ecozone has its own natural patterns. For example, the kinds or abundances of trees, plants, and animals. Because of this, the different ecozones create different experiences for humans living in them, and different stories have emerged to connect patterns on Earth with the star patterns overhead. Also important to note is that at different latitudes on Earth, different stars will be visible in the night sky for those humans living below. This too will result in richness and diversity in the night sky stories across Canada. This story is based on the Mi'kmaq night sky story Muin, the celestial bear. In times gone by, the Mi'kmaq people openly shared this story with visitors, likely while they all sat around fires in the Mi'kmaq communities scattered across Nova Scotia. One such visitor was Stansbury Hagar, an anthropologist who wrote down the story of Muin and published it in 1900 in the Journal of American Folklore. Unfortunately, no specific Mi'kmaq individuals or Mi'kmaq communities are named in the article. This story has been brought back to life by Elder Lillian Marshall from the Mi'kmaq community of Buttalodeck, also known as Chapel Island, in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. She worked in conjunction with Elder Merdina Marshall from the Mi'kmaq community of Eskazoni in Cape Breton, and the presentation was prepared by Senna Kavanagh of Cape Breton University. Muin and the Seven Bird Hunters is a very old legend told by Mi'kmaq for generations. The story is told in the present tense because it is always happening. This presentation is dedicated to the elders of Mi'kma'ki. Mi'kma'ki is the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people in eastern North America. These elders wish us to understand that the stars are the time givers. They are the calendar. In Muin and the Seven Bird Hunters, there are many characters. Muin, the black bear, is the most common bear in North America and occurs in all Canadian provinces with the exception of Prince Edward Island. Jipjawage is the robin. Robins are very common birds in the territory of Mi'kma'ki, and they are familiar to all people because they are easily identified by their red breasts. Chickadee, chickadee, is a small bird. Chickadees live in family groups, and members of the family are constantly talking to each other. Most of us are familiar with the chatter of a chickadee-dee-dee or a jiggy-gay-gay-gay. In this story, Jiggy-gays carries a birch bark pot known as woe in Mi'kmaq. Mi'kjagowhage is the gray jay. He is also known as moose bird by the Mi'kmaq people. Very territorial birds, gray jays are remarkable in that they nest very early in the spring and are already sitting on their eggs by March. Belez is the passenger pigeon. These birds were once very plentiful in Mi'kma'ki, feeding on acorns from oak trees and nuts from beech trees. Sadly, passenger pigeons are now extinct. This is due to the overharvesting of oak and beech trees, as well as belez being overhunted by non-native people who thought Mother Earth's resources were limitless. Next is Didies, the blue jay. Noisier than their gray jay cousins, blue jays are not very territorial. The splash of their bright blue bodies is immediately apparent, and they are seen frequently throughout the territory of Mi'kma'ki. Gugugwes is the barred owl. Living in deciduous forests, barred owls live throughout the land of the Mi'kmaq people. They find abundant small animals to hunt, and they are able to provide for themselves throughout the winter. Finally, there's little goopgwage, the northern saw-whet owl. These smaller owls, with their variety of calls, are interesting in that some winters they are able to stay in their homeland of Mi'kma'ki, and in other winters they need to fly further south to find enough food for the winter. These 7 birds are known as Nduksuinuk, the hunters. Here are their Mi'kmaq names. And their English names. It is a great gift that Hagar, in his published article, identified the stars in the Mi'kmaq legend by their Mi'kmaq as well as their Arabic names. Because he did this, it has been possible to get the birds to settle down in the sky and take their correct place in the story. This connection between the birds of the story and the specific stars might otherwise have been lost. It is also important to realize that these birds are how the Mi'kmaq people identified the stars.
Muin, achluigenik teesigen tuksuinu. Muin, na migamach, delwidadiji, neuliji glokowich, ebijik, meskelk muin, musigiskaduk. Na neesijik glokowich muin sugunek, na delwidadiji negamok, neesijik amskosawach, neganidajik, luigenik, mau teesijik tuksuinu. Bemiasokom tesquadil muinal, okwadnugel, musigiskaduk, which kaniwulagul nipk, na delwidadiji. Chipjawech, mida megweg glokowech. Jugiges, mida apjejijit, nkudai nige jugiges, hak mikjagogwech. Naaktigik, newijik, tuksuinog, ebultijik meskelk, tuksuino glokowech, musigiskedu. Uktudeminak delwidadidl, bootes. Kadugino migama ultig, gisidlwidadis non tuksuino bibugas. Na delwidadiji nade lebultiji glokowechk. Bless, Didies, mida musigis koamuksit glokowech. Gugugwes, hak gupgwej. Ula negamuk, nakalujik, bimigaya nipk, akasioldijik okwadnugwel. Dit pa kayo gisokoek ntuksuinug ebultidij na Kuchtokam kubijik, glokowech, ktudeminak, delamadiji, in kudei nige, elige widawatp. Kadu, kino, delwidemuk, muin wig, msigegwam. Dujuap, glokoweji jebit kikchuk, jugi gesal, na delwijik, juguges na tuamal, Mida wissugada na nebadij muinal. Na sa deliana wat kanewulagal nipk migamak jigaywadiji na newuliji muin glogwajum wasim goldijuk okat nogwel musigis kuduk. Wasamuktuaji Lewiginik desliji glogwajk delwidadiji Lewiginik desijik ntuksuinog. Tantu jigesigiga Tepkunuset tegenuich, nemiujig na newijig glogwajum muin, elogosink, maui espedek musigisk. Tantu jibochi wet kaniyak, usit kamus siuk, an kamadiji na newiliji glogwajk, nisakadajik eblawi nisaktek musigisk. Kisap asokomi simguldijik, okadnugwel musigiskuduk. Na hadugwakan muin ahalwiginik tesijik ntuksuino sahawe adugwakan migmaway.
Modern astronomers call stars that move around Dadabun circumpolar stars. Because this story progresses day after day, the Mi'kmaq storytellers chose to tell it as they see it in the sky 2 hours before dawn. In order to see this story, we too must look 2 hours before dawn. Because stars are the time givers or calendar, this night sky story is a story of the changing seasons and the events that occur in these seasons. Muin and the 7 bird hunters move around Dadabun. To give an overview of the pattern of the story, as seen in the northern sky 2 hours before dawn, here is Muin and the 7 bird hunters in spring, summer, autumn, and winter.
Achme negaw adugadimidish. Delia adugadimidish and kude nige giskuk deliagal. Mida neutenan deleg musigisk. Tantu jusikiga muin tuguyet, minchasit, geusink, mida nebad nautibuk. Nachtig, msigeguam, ak nisakam temat, espedegel, nemakamigegel, quilk, mijupjoy. Jugiges nemiadel, kadamogisi en kudi kottesquagal, mida asamiapchia jijit. Na wigma jo wigma. Na bijidajik, bokte desquadel muina, ak jugiges nespenadel otuamal, megwaye gebelidel, jipjawich, ak mikjagogich.
Jipjawich, Robin, sees Muin. Next, mikjagogich, Grey sees Muin. Then Bliss, the passenger pigeon, and Didius, blue jay. Then Gugwugwes, the bird owl, and, last of all, little Gupgwech, the sawed owl.
Na dalip kijinipk, na muin pemiasokam duguik, okad nogel musigiskuduk, ak tukswinuk pemteskaji.
They are Nuktukswinuk, the hunters. The little chickadee with its precious birch bark pot is placed between the larger birds, robin and gray jay.
Mida delji apche jijit mu wigma kalamkuk, kisi ksagado dedujum sigik musigask. Na dalip kijinipk, na muin pemiasokam duguik, okad nogel musigiskuduk, ak tukswinuk pemteskaji. Tokwa kaika na newijik tukswinuk Didius, Gopkwej, Gugugwes, ak Bliss, Portuguese penadijik, ak inkudi apquasyoldijik. Amsques Gugugwes, Tujigopkwej, apquasyejik. kisna apqasiejik. Kadamuk usugoy wa kopkwej muktu sumuedok wilo. Ahmo malik toksualaw. Tantelji wintoksit. Mujik sidmun wejulto tepkik dan pasigaymen upkisudu daw edlam keleg maskwi ak noguadu daw kudapson. Tuju didias akpeles keskades kujik kisna apqasiejik. Dan tuju welag toqa higa pasik nemiujik mikchagogej jigiges ak chipchawej. Nan tuksiwinug negaw nedugulidijik negaw pemtesquadidl muinaw. Klabis muin gispinet. Mdasak pemteskut na edebnedl chipchawejl. Na muin asigodeskut. Mimadui igalsit ti wekul kwadl dekteskawed. Chipchawej ankami eltaqamuaj machorteligen haq siktel wada haq nisyada muina cho kegwe gelorteskigel kwatkal kawising tijipchawaj bedasa pemteskwadl muina haq mesh padelek alusa toqar haq nenagadet kismaqodum wan muina wigeum na heloktasem sidl ula edli apchuguni alidl muinal ak gari amchaka sidek maldewek na helade jasit maugikchuk garamek kemuji jabi musigiske ak bewaktes doch maldo msitame gade mugisi mendestuk maldo upuskunk. Na jipchawaj bewaktes msid. Na maldo karayala baktisk. Dan tesigal elnigemojul usit hamu gopkeweg. Na uchid destorar higar megudajig nibishk kademam kuidajig kemuji jabiktuk. Mida negemoy maum snimidich maldo musigis nan kudai usit hamo kadu negemoy pasek kegwe gedek haq ajisarawe mu begjenok kisne baj muina begising jugiges delimadl na yapchu negemoy dedo akpuskum dan telip kidid luisin chipchawej na habok na madijik nuksimidij wiyos ak egujo dudij wasawa dudij jugigesal utuamal dan tuju bokchi mijusidij na begisink mikchagogej swaltok eskas kadu ankami wejidok sa bauti. Nanugu muna nakasiksip. Gijidok sip muinal nebadij lugoladak ak nuksadak wiyus ak usawaladak wawul. Muasa miktulugaksip. Asuma debidel maj kiswisuganaw na majasit. Tegising kay midij ak weldasit. Dan didijuwul deskumaj. Na wajadegem kek, munedugulik, pasigalik sadagot. Na migemak wenel del kamikslich, na delwidadidl, mikchagogaj. Chipchawej, akchuguges, mu amasigeyug. Esmadidl, mikchagogajal, tuju, neskawadijig. Medameski guldas waran. Chipchawej, mikchagogaj. Kuktoral gwedidl, wawul, hak jugiges, nesyaboradl wawul. Ach na deloltisnik, sakawegik, kiniskamijinakik. Migemakik, hogemakudel sultijig, hak tebi gedudich wiluwo. Na delip kiji book Muin uchijamijo gloko waju walida panjoko sinka musigiskudo.
Wigo baltimk achtabuk. Elogardemo wigo baltimk. Kisi sega was pile tepkonuset punam wigos. Dellogot wiwademo. Tanko oit tepchigeg. Aksabe widedemo. Kudenige. Chiniskam. Mimajwana minu. Dan walchagoltig. Tantel volortig. A tantel voli anquearortig. Ola negamoi mau depchigeg. Tesquigo baltim nocti bonkog. Negamoi kespiaoi. A pile boktamkia nocti bonkagoi.
Kadu apuktig Muin munemiamat panjoro sink msigagwamk. Uchijamijo mimajilidl hak delip kiji en padaw delip kiji book.
And so it is, the Mi'kmaq say, that when a bear lies on her back within her den, she is invisible even to those who might enter the den. Only a hunter gifted with great magic power could perceive her then.
Dan tuju silkwiga hap abadaw sidaw. Ak tuguyej dual sidaw msigagwam. Tuju ap tokwa rigar nisaka sidaw eblaw nisaktirikto hak nebaden. Uchijamijo ilgimadal mimajilidl aktuk muinal elison little musigiskuduk. Msigagwamk kadu mu nemiamat. Pasik buawin kisnemiada.
When the spring comes around again, Muin once more leaves her den to be again pursued by the hunters, to be again slain, and send life's bird once more to the den.
Ahme siawiach sit hamo wajadegemkek sarawegik midijek misoro kino modik kiskogoa mubesip kasno kispiaduk sitkik.
So, to return to the theme of patterns in the sky, reflecting patterns on Earth, we see how the Mi'kmaq people saw much meaning in the movement of the stars and how they interpreted this movement in their telling of the story of Muin and the 7 bird hunters. This type of pattern-based understanding is the basis of all scientific knowledge, regardless of the culture. Again, we remind ourselves that different cultures see different patterns in the sky and different stories. Here, we can see how the bear's den is made up of the constellation known to the ancient Greeks as Corona Borealis. If we look in more detail, we note that the size of the birds in the story directly relates to the apparent size of the star to the naked eye. In more detail still, we see that the Mi'kmaq star watchers were able to differentiate between the small Mizar, known as Chickadee in the story, and the star Alcor. Alcor seemingly sits directly on top of Mizar, which the story describes as being Chickadee's precious birch bark pot. Is there more to this story yet? Ancient Mi'kmaq petroglyphs from Kejimkujik National Park in mainland Nova Scotia reveal the figure referred to as Star Husband. Fitting neatly over the constellation of Bootes, matching up with the Corona Borealis, is he Unduksuinu, the great hunter, forever hunting Muin across the northern sky? This story is about just one part of the night sky. The Mi'kmaq people have many more rich stories for other parts of the night sky. The Mi'kmaq Nation encourages other Aboriginal people across Canada to reconnect with their night sky stories as part of the celebration of International Year of Astronomy 2009. It is important that all Aboriginal children feel connected to the night sky and that such efforts continue as legacies long after the International Year of Astronomy is over. The Mi'kmaq Nation also hopes to help awaken all people to the richness of understandings within Indigenous sciences across Canada and around the world.